Martha Tirk, Administrator for Nantucket Census Complete Count Committee. Today I'm talking with Jackie Echeverria, Tihomir Ivanov, and Vanessa Rendeiro about the 2020 U.S. Census. We know that many members of our community have questions about this constitutionally mandated count, and we're here to help. Because an accurate census will help Nantucket receive federal funding for the next 10 years to support programs and services that meet the needs of all islanders, and because our representation in Congress and in the Electoral College is dependent on our population count, we want to be sure that we get the resources and representation we deserve. The point of a complete census count is to be able to meet everyone's needs. We want to be able to get what we deserve for you because you are a part of Nantucket. Jackie, you bring a special perspective as both a community member and a census taker. What questions about the census are you encountering from your friends and neighbors and the people you meet in your work?
Hi, Martha. Thank you. I have a few questions. My first question is, what is the Census Bureau doing to ensure that all people, including non-English speakers, are counted?
That is so important, Jackie. Online and by phone, non-native English speakers can take the census in 13 languages. Online guides are also available in a total of 59 languages. If a census taker comes to your door and does not speak your language, you can ask them to do their best to find someone to return to help you in a language that you're comfortable answering in. The census is important for everyone on Nantucket, regardless of the language you speak, where you come from, or your immigration status. I can't emphasize this enough. The U.S. Census form does not contain any questions about citizenship or immigration status. While the White House has pushed for that, it has repeatedly been denied, and most recently, a federal judge rejected President Trump's order to exclude undocumented residents from the census count for purposes of apportioning congressional representation. This court decision is good news, but it's also important to remember that there's nothing about information collected in the census that would make it possible to reveal a person's status or comply with that order in the first place.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I think it's really important for everybody to understand that there's no affiliation between the Census Bureau and other government agencies. Okay, question number two is, and this is one of those questions that are very common right now when I am interviewing people. So, and it is, why is the census taker coming to my home when I already filled out the census online or by mail?
I bet you get that all the time. We all understand that this can be frustrating, probably you especially and your fellow census takers, but it's an important part of getting a complete and accurate count of everyone who lives on Nantucket. In some cases, census takers are following up with households who have completed the census to clarify or verify the information that was provided. And since Title 13 of U.S. law protects privacy, they don't know if this is the purpose of their visit. All full-time and seasonal households need to be counted, and census takers are here to help. Please welcome them into your homes and work with them for your benefit and for the benefit of your family, your friends, and our entire community.
Great. So this takes you to question number three, which is, should temporary workers be counted?
Another great question and really important and a very simple answer. Anyone who is living on Nantucket as of April 1 should be counted.
Okay. And question number four is, what happens if I don't fill out the census?
There is so much at stake. The federal dollars we talked about earlier that are allocated on the basis of census statistics support things like schools, health clinics, emergency services, our food pantry, our housing assistance programs, elder services, and so much more for the next 10 years. For every person that doesn't take the census, about $2,400 of funding per year, or $24,000 over the next decade, will be directed to other communities instead of Nantucket. So that's what happens if you don't fill out the census.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. And Tihomir, what's on your mind today about the census? What are the questions you're hearing from your friends and family and neighbors?
Well, I'm learning that there are two censuses this year, and that can be a bit confusing. I wonder why is this happening?
I totally understand. It is confusing. The town census is annual and the US Census only happens once every 10 years. Both are important. The town census is a one-page questionnaire and the US Census has 10 questions on multiple pages. The US Census is available to complete online at 2020census.gov. And when you get to the page where the form asks for your census ID number, if you don't have one, you can indicate that and you will be directed to a page where you can simply enter your physical street address instead. The town census, I believe, is closed, but the US Census is ongoing and the response deadline is September 30th.
So I'm learning that the data from the census is used to distribute federal funds and so on to local communities. I'm wondering how this affects education in our community, or what the impact on education would be.
Sure, education is certainly a high priority. Population statistics that are gathered from the US Census help the government allocate funding for schools and school programs. In the 2019-2020 school year, for example, over $3.6 million in federal funding and Chapter 70 state funding came to Nantucket, all based on census data. These funds support programs such as Head Start and special education, including for infants and families, and preschool programs and grants through states. They also support free and reduced school lunch and breakfast programs, and they support safe and supportive schools programs and Title I funding, which is based on the percentage of students coming from families that are experiencing poverty.
Thank you, Martha.
Vanessa, how about you? What's on your mind?
One person commented, "I'm fearful and also not sure whether I will stay in the US for years ahead. Is taking the census mandatory? If not, I think I'm not going to be counted."
The census takes place every 10 years, Vanessa, and it is mandated by the US Constitution, which calls for a count of all persons living in the United States. The Constitution does not specify a single thing about immigration status. So even though a person may not continue to stay in the US, they may have family members and friends who will be impacted by the census count, and perhaps their children will be impacted. A complete count ensures that each community gets the funding it deserves for vital services and programs that we all rely on for the next 10 years. Schools, health clinics, food and housing assistance, public transportation subsidies, emergency services, programs for seniors, natural disaster preparedness, and so much more. An accurate count of the number of people who live on Nantucket will make sure that our voices are represented in Congress and our votes are represented in the Electoral College. So now is the time to make sure that we are all heard and seen.
Thank you, Martha, for all the answers provided.
We also have a question that came in on our social media channels. The question is, I heard that you have to have a census ID number in order to fill out a form for your home on Nantucket when you've already filled it out in your home state. Is that true? And if so, how does someone obtain that number? The Census Bureau is interested in knowing the occupancy status of all homes on Nantucket. We ask you to complete the census for your Nantucket home using your physical street address if you don't have a form that shows your census ID number. And you should indicate whether someone was living at that address as of April 1st. Counting anyone who was there and not elsewhere as of that date will impact funding and representation for Nantucket. You can also give the information to a census taker if you happen to be home when they come knocking on your door. If you have further questions about this, please email me directly at nantucketcensus@nantucket-ma.gov, and I'll explain the simple steps you can take to indicate that your home was vacant as of April 1. This response will impact our response rate and provides important data about the nature of our community. Thank you all for being with me today and for asking such great questions. And to our viewers, I hope you learned something about the census, and I urge you to please take the census before the September 30th deadline.